It's nice to be here on a soundstage in the studio again. It's great. It brings back 40 years of memories. It feels like it was last week. There's a smell to a soundstage, kind of like a big musty closet. And as soon as I smelled it when I walked in, I said, there's no place that smells like a soundstage. I remember some people who are no longer here that were dear to me. I had some very good friends the time I worked here. Most of them weren't actors, they were just in other arenas of the studio. But it's nice to be back. My acting career really started because of my brother. He wanted to be in show business, and when we moved to Downey, California in the early 50s, he auditioned around town for various things. He invited me to come along and attend an audition for a play at what I didn't know was the world-famous Pasadena Playhouse. And anyway, long story short, because I was the only person who showed up, I got a 2-line part in the 1954 production of Ah Wilderness. I didn't get paid for the first job. There's no pay. But I showed up. I just enjoyed it. And I had 2 lines. Gee, Ma, I love lobsters. The other one was Uncle Sid's soused again. And that's the truth. And from that play, I got an agent. It was the same agency that handled, among other people, Laurel and Hardy, Igor Stravinsky, and a dozen other famous people. And they started sending me on interviews, and about 3 months later, I got a little part in a television show. Disney Studios came along in 1956. I'd already done about, I guess, 100 TV shows, 2 movies. It was just another interview. It was for something called The Hardy Boys. I did a test scene with Tim Considine, and I got the part. Studios didn't hire people who weren't good actors. There was no amateur night in Dixie in a Disney film. They paid good money and they got good talent, and so I was lucky. The first time I met Walt Disney was on the set of The Hardy Boys. He just came over and introduced himself. Hi, I'm Walt Disney. Nice to meet you, Tommy. Shook my hand, and it was very nice. I remember reading a short story about him in 7th grade, the year before I became an actor, in school. There was a very good short story in my social studies book about Disney Studios, and I'd seen 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so I knew, he was a big producer and studio head. So it was great. He'd smile at you when he'd say hello, a genuine smile. He was rather solemn, soft-spoken. I never saw him raise his voice or shout. He was down to earth. I thought he was a nice person. One of the last times I saw Mr. Disney, I just said, I never got a chance to say how much I loved Bambi, what a beautiful, beautiful movie that is, and how much I cherished the movie. He said, it was a lot of work. And I said, I also liked Peter Pan. And he said, well, we had some problems with that one. So I did the Mickey Mouse Club, did the Hardy Boys, and then they offered to put me under contract. I did 12 features. The first movie was Old Yeller, then Shaggy Dog, Swiss Family Robinson, Absent-Minded Professor, The Horse Masters, Bon Voyage, Son of Flubber, Escapade in Florence, Savage Sam, Moon Pilot, and the last one was The Monkey's Uncle. Old Yeller came along, kind of a bolt out of the blue, when they sent me a book written by a Texan named Fred Gibson. And they said, it's going to be a feature, and you're going to do Travis. Robert Stevenson was a very famous Disney studio director. I had never worked with him before. He had me come in and do a read-through. I guess he wanted to hear my accent. They're not big speechifiers on the frontier. Travis, he hadn't been to Harvard. I tried to come up with a reasonably convincing Texas accent, and I kind of stole from my mother, the native Kentuckian. She'd say, I can't do this. I can't.
I'll pin him up where he can't get out, and then we'll wait. We can't just shoot him like he was nothing. Don't you understand?
So I put that in the reading because I think had I not sounded right, they might have, well, let's try somebody else. It still moves people today. That's why I think Old Yeller is a good movie, because it deals with something every human being has to deal with at some time in their life, which is loss. Oh, my memories of Shaggy Dog, that's all the Bill Walsh era. Shaggy Dog was vintage Bill Walsh. I think that was his first great foray into, I call it Frank Capra West, you know, small town, eccentric American character people. A very light touch and a lot of heart thrown in.
Wilby, why don't you ask Allison to the dance?
Allison?
Why do you have to take a girl? Why can't he go with me?
That's a great idea, that is.
Shaggy Dog was actually 2 one-hour TV shows. And then somebody got the idea, why don't we put them together and release it as a feature? Huge moneymaker. Enormous moneymaker. And it was made for very little.
Well, I'd have bet anything he was going to be the All-American Wallflower.
There are a lot of things about your son that you don't know.
One interesting aspect of Shaggy Dog was the makeup. I was Wilby Daniels, the boy who turns into the dog, and that had to be done with special effects, of course. It's kind of like Lon Chaney and the Werewolf, but it was a comic version of that. But it was hard.
Get down!
Now don't give me trouble, Mooch.
You've got trouble. Look at yourself.
Oh, no, not here, not now, please.
I had to sit in a makeup chair with my head in a brace while they would build up and add pieces, and then we'd go and shoot a little more. It was very laborious, and it was hard to get the spirit gum off that the hair was on, and it itched and was hot.
Wilmy, come on up now. It's getting late.
Okay, Pop.
But it was an interesting adventure. Right after I graduated from high school in 1959, I was told the studio was going to do The Swiss Family Robinson. I had not read the famous book, but I knew about it. They said, go to the State Department, get your passport, get all your shots. You're going to Tobago. It's an island off the tip of Trinidad. And everybody said, what? We all arrive on the island, and off we go. 6 months of very arduous shooting. I think it was like a return to Eden, what the old Greeks would call the Golden Age, before sin came into the world. The wilderness and unspoiled virtue, the dream of the vanished innocence. There was something like that in the movie, and that's part of its appeal.
Go ahead, Father, you can do it. Even of course I can.
We shot not 5, but 6-day weeks, and sometimes we shot till late at night. But it was a great experience. There's a thing that Ernst does in the movie, which is, of course, ride the ostrich. I was very leery of that because the trainer told me, oh, it's no problem. She's a good bird. All you do is climb on her and she can carry you and everything. He said, but whatever you do, just don't stand in front of her because they will kick you if they can, and they can really hurt you. An ostrich foot is about that big and it weighs about 10 pounds. And it's clawed. It's a great big leathery thing like that. And that's how they fight. You ever seen 2 roosters in a cockfight fight? Well, ostriches sort of do the same thing. And they can disembowel you. They can take your head off your shoulders if they kick you right. He said, just don't get in front of her and you'll be all right. So I was very conscious of that. And she would turn around, you know, when I'm trying to get on her, she'd be turning around and I'd turn with her, you know, trying to stay out of the line of fire.
Out of my way!
It was fun. It was fun.
I'm gonna ride you if it's the last thing I do.
When I look back at The Absent-Minded Professor, I wish I could say I had a funny story, but really, that was 1961. I did 5 movies back to back to back to back to back. Babes in Toyland, Son of Flubber, Absent-Minded Professor, Moon Pilot, and The Horse Masters, all in 1 year. It was very hard work. That's the only time I really ever got tired. But it was worth it, working with Fred MacMurray. He was just a fascinating actor. You know, he was so interesting, and he had that deft comic touch. rather conservative and quiet, but he did have a temper. I remember him once refusing to do a scene. There was a line that offended him. He thought it was bad taste. Walt Disney was not there, but the director and the producer and all people around him kind of ganged up on him. I saw this with my own eyes, and he just said, "I'm not going to say it." No. And they went away. They left him alone. He didn't do it.
Maybe you better switch it off, Wilby.
How can I switch it off? I haven't switched it on yet.
He got mad at me one day. Mad as just hell, you know? It was. We were all doing Groucho. It was stupid, but we did. He suggested he stand one way instead of another way. And I said, "Oh, so, you got the close up."
Well, I guess we've officially entered the rocket age, eh, Pop?
He was not amused. And I was trying to be funny.
It'd be great to be up there riding it, wouldn't it, Pop?
He started shaking like this. And he said, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And he said, "Listen, when you've been in this business as long as I have, you know that anybody who would even think of doing anything like that is full of crap."
I wish I was on it right now.
Wilson?
I went through the floor. I turned purple. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. It was terrible, terrible. Boy, he just let me have it. I tried to say I was just kidding. It was just, I was just doing Groucho. I wasn't accusing you of upstaging me. Finally, I wrote him a note and said, "Mr. McMurray, I was just joking around. I didn't mean any harm."
Pop sure was sore.
Yeah, I know. I always seem to rub him the wrong way.
I guess he sort of forgave me because we worked together later in the week, and he said good morning. And I said, "Good morning, Mr. McMurray." And never Fred, Mr. McMurray. And we went on and finished the picture. We made 2 more pictures together. But, I learned a lesson. Some people you can kid with, and some people you better not. I see the actor as just one more element in the film. He has a role to play, as does the makeup person, the sound engineer, the director, and he has a job to do, and that's to work with the director and his own understanding and whatever skills he can bring to the table. I never concern myself with what other people do. I can't worry whether I'm being lit right or wrong. I can't worry, is the sound man asleep at the switch? Because if I start to worry about those things, I'm not concentrating on what I'm doing. I just did my job. I came in and knew my lines and knew what the picture was about and tried to think about the emotions and be prepared to do the scene. There's an old cliche, I don't know much about art, but I know what I like. And the older I get and the longer I live, I come to think I still don't know much about art, but I know what I like. I'm 60 years old next December, and I still haven't figured out a lot of mysteries in life and art and truth. Probably never will. I know what I like in acting, and it's very evanescent. It's like trying to describe the indescribable. The great pictures have heart. The great performances have heart. Why is it a bad actor leaves an audience cold as a stone? That's a bad movie. A person can play a great tragedy and there's not a wet eye in the house. The great actor can move people, can touch people. As I look back on my experience in years I spent at Walt Disney Studio, I think the high point was when my mother and father told me I had been offered a 7-year contract. That was a thrill, a great, great thrill. And I stayed 8 years, so I went one better.